All right, and we are live. Welcome everyone to our InfoSec Unlocked first event, and we're going to be chatting today with 4 panelists who all come from different conferences, and they all work on CFP, Call for Papers, and accepting talks. So each of them are going to give us a little bit of information about their conferences and try and fill you in on kind of how that all works. We have Sandy, Meg, Kyle, and Kat, all here from different various cons from across the US. So we have Boise, NovaCon, DakotaCon, and Indianapolis,
Circle
City Con. So if you guys want to just go down the line and tell us a little bit about each of your conferences, like the focuses or the main topics or common submissions, go right ahead. Why don't we start with, on my computer in order, we have Sandy.
So I'm Sandy Dunn. Our conference is B-Sides Boise. It happens in November. This year will be our 3rd year. Our focus is really on building communities. So we're relatively small. We have a population in this area of about 650,000 right in the Boise area. So we're really just trying to build up, connect all the security people. That, a lot of people base out of here, but we wanted to give them an opportunity to come and kind of get together and talk about security stuff. We're really open to anything. Really encourage people to not just talk about how they broke stuff, but just how can we do better at security as a community? What can we do to prevent or educate or, kind of reduce the attack surface overall? We really have a mix of topics, everything from hardware hacking to, security vulnerability to almost anything. We've even had people who presented on like LARPing, and that was a really popular topic. It was like, I was kind of surprised, but everyone really loved it. I mean, they didn't know anything about it. It kind of gave them a chance to look at things. We really do focus on diversity. One of my favorite talks this year was by a gentleman who was autistic, and he talked about how being autistic helped him be a better pen tester. So we really want people to come in and bring their authentic selves, kind of bring your weird and feel comfortable.
Nicely put. Meg?
Hi. Yep, I'm good. Meg Layton. I am with B-Sides Nova and was on the review panel for this conference. It's at the end of this month, and it's the first year for this conference. And because of our location, which is right in Northern Virginia, we're really focused on kind of people getting started and extending also some of the information about policy and government, because we're very close to DC. But we're also focused on new ideas. There's a lot of security incubators starting up right in this Dulles metro area. And so we have a lot of people who are just getting in and have a lot of great and new ideas. And in addition to the traditional talks, we also then have, we have a capture the flag competition going on, as well as some advanced talks, some forensics. Marcel's coming and doing a forensics course to get you started in forensics, some reverse engineering malware courses. So it's also a good place to go and meet other people who are interested in perhaps a section of security you haven't had experience in yet.
Okay. Kyle?
Yeah, so I'm with DakotaCon. We are probably in the smallest town you would imagine. So we're in Madison, South Dakota. It's a town of about 6,000 people. Our nearest Walmart is, I think, 50 miles away. So it kind of puts the scope. Everyone knows what Walmart is, so ours is a ways away. What our con started out as is we're actually a small public university that teaches different security stuff. We have software security, network security, computer science, things like that. And we kind of wanted to bring a dose of DEF CON back to our students. We have about 1,000 students in the programs here on campus. So it's really, really expensive to take 1,000 college kids to Las Vegas, plus all the extracurriculars that come with that. So we started bringing a little piece of DEF CON and Black Hat back with us. That's how our con kind of got started, was we actually reached out and picked people to come and speak. But as our con grew bigger and bigger and bigger, we started reaching out and just having folks from the community attend, not just our university. So we started an actual call for papers a couple of years ago, and just kind of to see what would happen. We kind of got some really cool results. So our cons kind of evolved from just being a software security to things from lock picking to just design principles, like why do IoT things suck? Or how did we get here kind of thing. So all the way back to we're breaking a little bit of stuff too. So we kind of try to keep a good variety in it.
All right, Kat.
So I'm with Circle City Con. This is its 4th year. I've been with it since the 2nd year, but this is my first time co-chairing their CFP. And Circle City Con is in Indianapolis, held in June every year. This year it's June 9th through 11th. It's been about 500 attendees the past couple of years. And it's, again, a small familial con. And one of its hallmarks, in addition to having talks, is that there are community-led trainings all weekend built into the cost of the conference. So you don't just go passively sit in it. There are talks too, but you can kind of get your hands dirty. And as far as topics, it's not just entirely offense. There's always a good mix of offense and defense talks and things that are neither sort of security adjacent. Things like I spoke about ham radio there a couple of years ago. Some of the trainings have been with like wearable electronics, things that are related and of interest to the security community without being like hardcore, you know, the latest shiny exploit. So we try to really encourage first-time speakers to submit. It's a smaller audience, and so a lot less intimidating than if you go straight for DEF CON. And we really do want a wide variety of speakers.
So that's an awesome lead-in, because the next question was, does your conference accept a range of multidisciplinary topics beyond hardcore technical aspects? And I know a lot of you covered a little bit of that. You touched on that. Can you say a little bit about like the breadth that you usually see? And you don't have to go in order, anybody.
Well, so we see a little bit of everything, and we're open to anything. Again, you know, just and I would say that we look for talks that aren't just advanced talks, because we want to, you know, be able to, you know, for everyone to enjoy the conference. So we look for people who are first-time presenters, maybe not talking about such an advanced topic, to, you know, extremely, you know, this is new, 0 day, you know, this is the first time somebody's talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. Indy's got a lot of universities around, and so we've always got a student presence, and so 101 level talks are definitely welcome alongside the advanced level talks and trainings.
So I'd agree on that, and also I actually think the thing nobody tends to talk about when you have a career in cybersecurity is the soft skills of cybersecurity. And so in our conference, we have things, I think one of the talks is actually called Soft Skills in Cybersecurity and Human Networking and the Human Aspect of cybersecurity. So we do both sides. I think we also have one on like the imposter syndrome, because I think that's something a lot of us suffer from.
We kind of echo a lot of those same things. We have, you know, we are just here for college students, was where we started anyway. So being able to have those cool technical things at all levels is a big deal for us. But actually the past couple of years, we've had speakers that, even though we have community outside of our university coming to DakotaCon, we actually have had a lot of our speakers focus their talks on just college students. Like, what are you going to do with your life when you're done with this?
So moving on a little bit, how can a person tell if they have a valuable or interesting topic?
They probably do.
Yep.
If they know enough to ask that, I agree.
How would you decide that, like, when you're trying to come up with a paper topic, if you've ever talked before, how do you usually try to come up with that topic?
One thing is this something that you can talk about for hours and that you can put hours into? Because you're not just going to be spending 50 minutes talking about it and then be done with it. You have to put research into it. You have to prepare your talk, and people will ask follow-up questions who see the talk for months afterwards, not just right after. So if it's something you're interested in and you believe is adding value to the community in some way, then you've got a topic.
I kind of go with the oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I kind of go with the bar napkin thing. If we can sit around in a semi-social setting with a small group of people and everyone's really excited and you're really excited, that's what makes good talks, is people that are excited and passionate about what they're doing. So if you can carry that level of excitement, then you can convey it to others. So that's kind of the test. The litmus test is if you can go in a small group and get everyone else excited for something new, then I think that's when you know enough that you can submit a talk.
Yeah, I would agree with that I kind of use the bar napkin test too. And I'd also say I kind of work it the other way. I don't know there's a conference and then look for a subject to submit a talk. I come up with an idea in a bar somewhere and think, hey, that'd be a great talk, and then look for a conference.
I know we had somebody was asking a question whether it had to be purely new research in order to submit.
We can look at some of the coolest zero-day attacks are just reuse or reiterations of like things that were patched long ago. So I don't think it has to be something brand new. It can just be a new perspective. Like, I never thought about something that way. Could be a really cool talk.
Yeah, research builds off of research. That's science.
Yep, I agree with that.
But also, it depends on the conference. Some conferences are explicitly looking for new research. Some state that they don't care whether it's new research. So it depends on the aim of the con.
So that's true, and also the audience of the con. So especially in InfoSec, there's the InfoSec community, and then there's like the business side of InfoSec, and sometimes the cons are aimed at the business side of InfoSec, and so that's kind of a whole different thing than some of the smaller or the B sides or the DEF cons. Like the ISC squared conferences have a much different slant to them sometimes. So.
Okay. So does your conference accept a rate? That was a different question. How can a person tell if or when they have enough information on a topic to submit their CFP?
I'd kind of go back. Go ahead, Sandy.
I was going to say it's almost like an abstract on a paper where, do you have enough of an idea that you could write a small paragraph on it that you could kind of present what you want to talk about, and then that's enough of an idea. But make sure make sure you can back it up. Just don't, like, I think before you ever submit, you better have most of your paper done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of writing an outline before you've submitted it, even if they don't require one, because that way you can actually start to think about, how is my talk going to flow? What are the things I'm going to cover? Let that inform your abstract.
So our CFP is really, I think it's kind of really limited. We really only ask for a really basic abstract, and then we reach out from there. So that's what we look for after we look for that abstract that sounds really cool. And we're only talking about a few sentences. We don't get a ton of submissions. So our group can kind of sit down and review those abstracts. Then from there, we reach out and say, hey, just kind of double check to make sure your idea flows, right? But once someone's been engaged by us, then they kind of know, like, we want this talk. We just want to make sure you're for real and not kind of messing with us.
Right. We did it very much the same way. We kind of, when we were assessed on content, speaker, and applicability. So some of the demos got, if they could if you're going to talk about doing a demo, you have to put something in there that shows you actually know how to demo it, and you're not making it up. So it really depends on kind of what you're submitting as to how much you want to put in there, but you kind of want to look at it from how they're assessing their papers a little bit too.
Okay, we have a few watchers right now, so I want to make sure that since there's only a couple questions I have left that are on my list, if you have questions for the speakers, there should be on YouTube Live a thing on the sidebar where you can type in and leave us little messages, and we have somebody in the background who is taking those messages and letting us know what kind of questions we should ask, so that I don't have to sit here and try to follow all the stuff going on. But if you have questions, please submit those questions right now so that we can get to them in a few minutes. Next question is, have you ever submitted to a conference and been rejected? If so, what was the experience like and what did you do next?
See, being rejected is easy. Doing the talk is hard. Because if you're rejected, but you're still believing your talk, you rewrite it, you kind of take that feedback, provided they give you some. Most of the conferences will actually give you some feedback, and you revise accordingly. And then you submit again to another conference. There is no shortage of conferences these days. It's when you're accepted and then you have to make the talk that you're like, okay, now I have to focus.
Mm-hmm.
So being kind of in a, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've certainly submitted and been rejected, but I think, you just keep submitting until until it gets accepted.
Yeah, definitely. The right conference is out there. It's just a matter of finding it. And even if it doesn't get accepted to a con, you might have a local meetup or like an OWASP chapter or something where you can give it and then sort of test it out and get feedback that way and get speaking experience that way. But I've been rejected a bunch of times, but every CFP that's been rejected that I've submitted has eventually found a home somewhere. So keep trying. And occasionally some cons, like DEF CON has villages outside of its main speaking tracks, and I have submitted to DEF CON, gotten rejected, and it gets sent on to one of the villages. Like I submitted Sky Talks that way.
It could be, so I'm in like this whole academic-y world, which is weird. So a lot of the things that I have to do are submit papers and talks and stuff like that to academic conferences. What's really weird about them versus our, like the type of CFPs we're talking about is they're double-blind reviewed. They're actually reviewed and audited by other people that submitted. So we end up getting really crazy detailed feedback from all of these other people from all across the country. The actual conference organizers are like the last people to even see the actual submission. So it's a really crazy, hugely broad peer review. I think it'd be really cool if there was a way that could be like easily reproduced in the InfoSec community, but it's not something that we do. It'd be neat if we could at ours, but something that I've had experience with. And rejection is, you just get used to it, right?
It's like applying for jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm always interested to see how other cons approach the review process, because some will like put it to a community vote to vote on their talks, either by attendees or people who just happen to vote on them. And like we do a blind review for ours. Some don't do blind reviews because they're trying to curate specific content. Yeah.
I think on our con, we do curate specific, we'll reach out to specific people. But then for our actual CFP process, what I literally do is take this CSV file and copy the title and like the meat of it. I don't include names or anything like that, and send it out to our group of reviewers, so they don't even have the slightest idea who made this talk. And then we just talk about like what fits our audience of, if it's students or people from our community around the area, and what would be best for us. So.
That's a good question that was actually on our one of our list list was, do you have any kind of blind review process involved in your reviews? And then when I say blind review, I mean like you remove all the people's names so that it allows the removal of bias when your reviewers are looking at the papers.
Ours are blind reviewed and they're double blind. So when we give the option to let people see their feedback, they don't know which reviewers gave their feedback, gave which comments. And then the final ones, I mean, obviously the organizers can see them, but we tend to make our decisions based on the scores that blind reviewers have given.
Do other people have blind review?
We're small enough that we're pretty much, if you submit and it's a decent talk, we'll make sure that you have a spot. Now, I think we've grown fairly quickly, so I don't know how long that we'll be able to, to be able to do that. But yeah, right now, as long as it's, looks like something the audience would be interested in. So we don't have a blind review process. I think we'll probably have to move to it as we mature.
Right. So since this was the first year for this conference, we didn't do a blind review either. I think probably from the same kind of aspect. We didn't know how many people we would get submitting, so it was a little hard to gauge kind of how to set up appropriately.
And then, we actually do a blind review, but ours kind of ends up being not necessarily a score system. It's just a set of yays and nays. We get some submissions that are really academic-y, research papery things that aren't quite let's let this out to the community and keep people excited, because not saying academics aren't always exciting, but sometimes that happens. So sometimes we're like, yeah, this maybe isn't quite what we're looking for, and then it usually comes back on to us of like, yeah, we didn't advertise this correctly. It's actually what we found with the talks that we turned down. We didn't ask for the right things.
One of our viewers asked, does your conference have any policies that support underrepresented groups?
No, we don't try to fit people in. I mean, I would say that, we definitely won't, one thing about us is we've had a number of people who wanted to come be like keynote speakers, and we'd be like, oh yeah, great, we'd love to have you, submit through the process. So we didn't just say, oh yeah, Mr. Rockstar, come join us. We really try to make it be level. So I think that's the theme. But on the other side of it, I mean, if you're already, if you start trying to handpick specific people because you're judging that they're underrepresented, I mean, that gets to be pretty dicey. The whole point is to make it open, even for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually something in ours, we don't even collect or ask any kind of really demographic information. We're really just interested in the talk, I guess.
Yeah. We, Circle CityCon did adopt a code of conduct finally last year, and I know that's with some diversity in tech organizations, that's a big thing for some people. They don't want to speak at a con that doesn't have a code of conduct or has one that has no teeth. And so we really want to make sure that people who we want to have come speak at the con are going to feel safe and okay doing so.
Yeah, so I don't think we haven't put out a policy. Again, first year makes it, some of them are growing pains, because until you see who shows up, it makes it hard to be like, oh, here's what we have to do better next time, right? So I think you're going to see some growth in action as we grow.
So do people typically think of an idea, submit a talk, and then, assuming acceptance, build out their talk? Or do you recommend having an idea of what your talk should look like before submitting?
Yes and no, because it's going to be very iterative. You're going to start working on your talk, and maybe you'll even start speaking it through. And once you rehearse it, you'll find that you'll have to change sections around because it's not going to flow as well. So just be prepared for it to be really dynamic, even if you think you have a good idea of what it's going to look like going into the submission process.
I think that's really important to not have like a solid idea, because if I have a kind of a basic idea for a talk, the talk that I would give here in the middle of a small town, South Dakota, is very different than how I would approach it in Las Vegas at DEF CON. It could be the same talk, but the approach is going to be maybe way different.
So I would agree with that. I was just thinking I would consider the audience as well as some of the format. Sometimes I'm submitting for like a 10-minute lightning talk, and sometimes it's a 45-minute, with a demo talk. And so the subjects are the same, but the delivery method is completely different. So I really have to take that into consideration. I almost always outline it on things I can do and then tailor it as I go through the kind of writing up the abstract and stuff for the outcome I would desire.
So then the viewer question, taking the viewer question into account, it sounds like you're saying, yes, submit a talk with your idea, but then afterwards think about what that, once it's been accepted, think about that group that you're actually going to talk to.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. What's important to look for online to know that a conference is friendly to new people? And it sounds like when Kat was talking about it, it's that sort of code of conduct thing. But also, is there other things that you could be looking for online?
A lot of them will actually say, first-time presenters welcome, or, we welcome your first talk. So I've seen that recently, which is a really good kind of trend in my mind. And again, I think some of the smaller conferences especially are friendlier to the first-time conference than throwing them up in front of, Black Hat and hoping for the best.
And a lot of cons are starting to have a new speaker track. Like besides Las Vegas has the Proving Ground where they pair you with a mentor, but there are some other cons that do specific new speaker tracks as well. I think especially a couple of other B-sides. I know B-sides Chicago a few years ago did a new and local track.
All right. What are some of the most common mistakes that you've seen on a submission?
I think for us, the common mistake has just been submitting, and it's really hard because we don't have a set track, like a set topic area, but our common mistakes have been like talks submitted and we're like, oh, you're talking about like a business disaster recovery policy talk? Like that has nothing to do with us or our audience. Just as an example.
The thing that I think kills submissions most often, from what I've seen, is lack of detail in the outline and the abstract. Some just lack of clarity in what they're saying or what the point of their talk is. Or sometimes too much verbosity without really conveying their message. I mean, you want your outline to be more than 4 or 5 bullet points, and you want your abstract to be more than 1 sentence. So generally, not enough detail and not following directions.
Yeah, I think that's probably right for us too. Not enough detail, not following directions. I think if it sounds like something off a sales slick, that can cause a challenge because we don't want, sales pitches. And so there's a little bit of that, I see people kind of doing that. They're like, well, we'd like to talk about my company's product. And yeah, not come be a vendor sponsor. We're happy to have you. You can stand outside.
We don't even let our vendor sponsors do sales pitches. Like, in fact, when they come, when we go out and speak with vendors, we go, okay, you actually have to come in and show us why your product is so great. Don't just hit people with PowerPoints or hand out, squeezy balls. I mean, you have to show us. We're a bunch of geeks, so come let us geek on whatever you're bringing.
That's great.
In your own experience, have you ever been hesitant to submit to a conference, and why? I said no one.
Yeah.
You're like, nope, I'm gonna submit. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
go ahead.
I'm a mom. I have 2 kids, so I'm hesitant to submit to places that I can't take them, just because or schedules don't work out. So I often don't for that reason, not because of anything specific to conference, but more about my own personal schedule. I think I have been to conferences that, because of my personal experience, would make me hesitant to submit to them in the future.
Can you expound on some of those experiences? Like, what would make you uncomfortable at a conference?
It's not necessarily uncomfortable, but if it wasn't what I was looking for, you know, when you go to a conference, if you're looking for, I don't know, a hands-on, technical track, and you end up with kind of more sales pitchy stuff, then even if they change out their review board or they say that's not going to happen, I still wouldn't be the first one to dip my toe in that water, so to speak. It just wouldn't be the best investment of my time.
I was definitely hesitant the first time that I submitted to conferences back in 2013, and it took the convincing of my ex, who was working in InfoSec, and a couple of others, to actually, get me to believe, yeah, what's the worst that could happen, and got to give my talk at B-Sides Las Vegas and in the Proving Ground, which was a great experience because I got to work with a talk mentor. And then got rejected from DEF CON, but accepted to Sky Talks. So, yeah, the worst that could happen was actually pretty good. And I still got a little sad reading my DEF CON rejection feedback, because it was the first time I had ever experienced a con rejection. It's kind of like, oh, that's why you've got to keep submitting, so that you keep getting rejected and kind of build up some tolerance to it. They didn't say anything mean.
It's like hard though, because you put so much time into the idea and then someone's like, yeah, no, right? Especially those first times.
Yeah, they're calling your baby ugly.
We have another viewer question. Do the people who receive a rejection get any sort of summary as to why their CFP was rejected? I think some people already talked a little bit about that.
We'll give feedback upon request. Reviewers write comments as they're reviewing them. Some CFP platforms make this easier than others to send out comments, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
Ours is usually by request.
And so I think that's how we handle it too. Some of our, if you request it, I think we'll send out if it's helpful.
Do you know of any guys who will? Do you guys know of anyone who will proofread CFP submissions for newbies?
Yeah, Kat's raising her hand. I've certainly provided feedback. People have submitted things and been nervous about it, and then I help them, put it together. So.
Yeah, and it depends on the groups you're involved in. Like I'm involved with Sisters through the Anita Borg Institute, and certainly anytime anybody puts out a, hey, I have this idea, can somebody review it? You get about 15 people who are like, yeah, we'll help.
We actually, if someone will send their CFP, it's not official, but just to our generic email account, we're like, hey, what do you think about this? Because they're wondering is it too technical? Is it not technical enough? Their core idea is there. They're just wondering what side of the meter they need to be on. We usually give feedback on things like that. We don't want it to be secret sauce of you're not allowed to know the secret formula.
Yeah, I've proofread a lot of people's submissions and had them proofread mine, and I think it's also helpful to have someone take a look at it who's not an expert in whatever you're talking about, because you have to see if it's going to make sense to somebody else. Because like our review team, they've all got different InfoSec backgrounds. So you have to know that your talk is going to make sense to people who might be interested, but not experts.
As an aside, InfoSec Unlocked as a group is working towards helping people get their CFPs accepted to different places. So if you're looking for an organization that might help you with proofreading, you now know where we are. We exist here on the internet. All right, back to my list of questions. In your own experience, how do you come up with an idea for new talks? Just that writing it down on a bar napkin?
Sometimes in the shower or at like 1 a.m. when I'm falling asleep.
It just seems like when you're just working on something and you hit this moment of like, I wonder, you kind of start with, to me anyway, like, my friend might think this is cool. So you tell them about it and they're like, yeah, that's awesome. And then it just sort of, I would say any talk has really just been this idea that just spirals out of control. And then all of a sudden ends up being a talk submission. And then all of a sudden you're somewhere speaking about this crazy idea you had one day.
Sometimes they happen just organically from conversations that you have at cons about other talks that you saw. That's definitely happened before.
Yeah, and I think also reviewing, like, I work in software, so thinking the lessons learned process as soon as I'm sitting in the group with in the room with my team, and we're like, oh, we should have known better than to do that. That'd be a really great talk. And, it gets fed that way. Like, I don't want other people making my mistakes, so.
I can give you an example. So I just went through looking for a job, and one of the other people who's actually part of the B-Sides community, he was going through it too. And we really leaned on each other. As we went into the interview processes, we kind of prepared with each other. We bounced questions, we role played, and he and I were talking. He just got accepted at his job last night. And I was like, you know what, we should really turn this into a talk, because your experience, my experience, like, we really gained a lot by doing this together. And, kind of go in saying, I kind of thought it would be easier. Everyone kept telling me how many people they need in the security community. And I thought I'd just throw my resume out there and I'd have a job in 2 days. It was much harder than that. And this guy's really a genius, and it was really hard for him too. So we thought, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to kind of go out and present on this about how we helped each other, how we coached each other, and how it was successful. So that's an idea of, like, okay, who else would benefit from this? We saw a lot of value in being able to bounce ideas off each other. Maybe other people would think about doing it too if they thought about it.
I'd add to that, so I'm a teacher, so there's always the teacher thing of, well, if you have a question, somebody else probably has that question too, so you should speak up and ask, right? That's the same thing with having similar experiences and wanting to tell people about it. There's maybe people that could learn from your experience because you had it, so why not share?
Next question: Does your conference offer any compensation for the speakers that come to your conference? I know DEF CON does, but they're huge, so.
We've talked about it. It's something that we keep it, like, we'd like to do that, but we're so new that we haven't gotten to a place where we can actually do it yet.
Yeah, I think it's something we'd like to in the future, but we sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
We don't have the budget for it right now, so we in addition to free admission, we give speakers a +1 so that a friend can come for free.
The tricky thing, we are a free con. We have trainings that you can pay for, but all of our talks are free. So we have some sponsors and whatnot. So we at least try to pay travel expenses up into a certain amount, so that, I'm not gonna lie, we're in South Dakota, right? So you're not just gonna quick drive over to us. And even for us, our nearest airport is 50 miles away. So there's expenses that are that come up from getting here. And as much as we all want to do this out of the goodness of our heart, like it costs money to get to some of these cons. Maybe not always, but for us especially. So we at least try to cover everyone's travel expenses.
All right. And all of our viewers here, just remember that you can continue submitting questions for the next 15 minutes. Next, does your conference accept submissions on subjects far outside of core topic areas?
I invite the challenge. I think it'd be cool. We don't usually, we don't have many submissions that are like totally off the wall, but I think that would be awesome. And we would totally accept it if it just kind of meets that, like, that sounds cool test.
I think that goes for us too. If it sounds cool, yeah, we'll look at it.
Yeah,
we look at everything. I think it'll depend on how much time we have. We do have, I wouldn't say it's far outside. We do have some that are skirting the edges outside. Like they're not in outer space, but I'd say they're skirting the edges. But I think they may meet the cool test. So, you know, they're interesting enough that the people who were reviewing on the board of reviewers thought they were interesting. And so, you know, that's 6 people right there who thought it was interesting.
I know earlier somebody said they had a LARPing talk. Well,
Yeah,
that was cool.
I
It
think
was really popular. It was really popular.
we had a couple of years ago, Jack Daniel did a home bartending training. Cool test.
So home bartending, that's what you get if you go to Circle City Con. Remember that, home bartending.
I think I know what I'll be adding to my schedule now.
Can you get there from South Dakota?
Some of the planes actually do stop here that just all fly over.
Does your conference have any mentoring programs or other special focus for new speakers?
Not officially, but if someone submitted and said, hey, I'd like some mentorship, we would find somebody to help them.
Yeah, we don't have anything specific in place. I'm usually happy to answer people's questions about submitting, though. I mean, I want to see people succeed. We also, for the past couple of years, we've hosted Hack for Kids at Circle City Con, and I think, but I'm not sure, but I think that they sometimes have kids giving presentations for part of that. So that's another way to have them break in.
Yeah, we don't have anything specific, but I have served on reviewers for other conferences, like where people have done that. Again, since we're the first year, it's a little hard. I think we're lining up ideas for next year on how we can improve.
We're even, I think this is our 7th year now. We're really bad at that. Just reflecting after now, yes, the question. We want everyone to be really successful, and we try to reach out and answer anyone's questions about who's the audience going to be, what kind of platform, even like what kind of connector for your laptop, right? There's just silly questions sometimes that we don't always think about making sure it's covered with everyone. So those are questions to ask, is the moral of that story.
Yeah. So does your conference have any ways in which they handle new authors in comparison to experienced authors?
Can you repeat the question? My mic was having issues for a moment.
Okay. Is there any way in which you handle new authors differently than experienced authors?
For us, not really, since we kind of blindly review everyone. We don't necessarily know if it's a new author or an experienced one or like the person in the office next door to mine. We usually never really find out until we kind of bring it all together.
Yeah, not really, with the exception of the keynotes, which I haven't been involved in keynote selection before. So, but I wouldn't expect that we would approach a first-time speaker for a keynote. I don't know.
What is your conference's general acceptance rate? Oh, Sandy, you muted.
I was going to say it's 100% right now. So we really do try to get everybody in.
Anyone else?
So we had space. From what our submission, I think we were able to accept a third of the submission. So we got it was a much more popular submission than we expected for a first year conference, I suspect.
I'd say ours is probably at 85 or 90%. We don't get a ton of submissions because I'll again beat the like, why wouldn't you want to come to South Dakota and talk, right? But that's usually the problem we have is just folks being like, that doesn't sound like fun at all.
This year's stats are yet to be determined because our CFP is open right now. Nudge, nudge.
Yay!
Last year, I don't know the exact figures, but I would guess more than 50 and less than 100%.
So if you want to submit CFPs right now, Circle CityCon. That's the one you want to go to.
Yeah.
Do you have any blog posts or examples of good versus bad submissions?
I wrote
have
a post. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that I have most of the presentations posted up on our website right now. So if you wanted to see what people talked on last year, you can go pull down most of the presentations.
I wrote a post a couple months ago on just the building blocks of a CFP submission, like breaking down what the abstract should look like, what an outline entails, what your bio should have. And I wrote a sample CFP outline of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well,
I turned it into a detailed outline.
it looks as though I'm being told that we actually have that on our website, isunlock.com. So it's posted there as resources for people who want to talk or write a CFP. We also have other things there, so if you want to go, it is isunlocked.com, all one word. And there's other helpful things there. Does anybody else have a good, helpful posts, places to go to learn more about CFP?
I've read a couple things recently because I also teach another class, and some of my students had asked, so I've read a couple things. I'll put together a list. I'll send them to you. You can post them on your site.
That'll be great.
The one I've seen that's been really helpful, I don't know if this is on your site, but was by Nikita, who runs the DEF CON CFP. Came out a few years ago on what makes a good submission, and there's a lot of really good info in there.
That's also available on our site. Does your conference post specific guidelines and expectations? If so, where can our viewers find that?
Our requirements are so not specific, and we don't even know what we're looking for sometimes. So we don't really have much.
There's guidelines on our site for both the presentations and the poster submissions. So we're encouraging both the poster tracks and the talks.
Ours is pretty high level, just, don't include identifying information in your outline or abstract, and, word limits. And we've got a few resource links for how to write a CFP submission on there as well. But I figured there's a point at which, putting too much information on the CFP website will just overload people to the point where they wouldn't read it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Outside of the word limit and kind of here's the guideline of, these are the different types of tracks. Are you doing a panel? Are you doing a 10-minute lightning talk? Do you need 2 hours? Because we have a space consideration. The guidelines were a little loose.
All right. Do any of our viewers have any final questions for us? Please post them in now. One of my final questions here is, any words of encouragement for people who are tempted but still unsure whether to submit?
Initially, like, worst case scenario is it gets accepted, right? I mean, that's the absolute worst thing that can happen. Best case is, well, yeah, that'd be best case too. I mean, I think all these CFPs are willing to give you feedback, even if it's not something they were really looking for. My advice is to look at past years' talks, the speakers. Some of them might be headline people you instantly recognize, and others are going to be like, who, I've never heard of this person before. So you can tell if a con is looking for, what kind of demographic they're looking for as far as being popular or not. But finding the right topic is important, and being really like flexible. I would say, like, don't take it personally if a con doesn't accept your talk. It doesn't mean it's a bad talk. It just doesn't fit in well. And that, I think, is kind of that's the hard part for me, is like, was the talk bad or did it just not fit?
Or was there 3 other submissions on a similar topic?
Yeah,
Right.
That's a big one too.
I think that's a big one. Like, we had Internet of Things was a really big and broad topic right now, but we didn't want it to be only an Internet of Things conference, so we had to make some choices then accordingly, right? So I'd say my words of encouragement are, you don't want to give up, but I'm a big fan of the what's the worst that can happen, because I am actually an introvert, and talking scares the living daylights out of me. So the worst that could happen to me is it gets accepted. So
Yeah, and I mean, we want to see people succeed, and so don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help at really any step of the CFP life cycle, whether you need to rehearse in front of a friend or have a proofreader. There are people who will want to help, and even if you bomb when you go on stage, try again. Generally, people are more forgiving than what your anxious, panic brain is telling you. So, yeah, keep trying.
All right. Any final thoughts from anything we talked about?
Actually, just made the comment about, like, when you bomb on stage. I've been there before, and I've seen it happen, and I think we've all kind of seen it happen. And usually, especially because none of these cons are like DEF CON. We're talking thousands of people or anything. It almost seems like when you go on the stage and kind of have this panic attack or things don't go well, the audience is usually so interested in what you were talking about that you end up, I planned an hour and somehow was done in 35 minutes. And what happened? The audience is always like so interested in what you're really doing. Throughout the questions, you'll end up giving like the talk that you really hoped for, because the audience brings it out of you, not, and not in a painful way either.
Do you have any final pitches for the audience to submit to your conference or come to your conference?
Circle CityCon CFP is open right now.
It's in the middle of the States.
Yep, it's in the middle of the States. It's near a bunch of other big cities besides Indy. Also not my con, but one that I was a mentor for last year is the B-Sides Las Vegas Proving Ground. I believe their CFP is still open, and that's a wonderful track for new speakers.
Yeah, we're in November, so you can start submitting right now. So if you have a great idea, start submitting.
Ours is at the end of this month, so clearly our CFP is closed because we're only 3 weeks away. But
And you're in
but we'd
Virginia?
love to see anybody. So if anybody's coming, be sure to look me up.
NovaCon's Virginia?
Yeah, Northern Virginia.
So people could come to your conference.
They could come to my conference.
We're about a month and 3 weeks away. We're end of March 31st is when we are. So definitely, if you just happen to be passing through for some weird reason, feel free to stop in and say hi.
If you have any last words of encouragement, now's your chance.
So I think that one other thing is sometimes people don't always ask, but it's always offered if asked, is if you do get rejected, it's worth asking, do you know another conference that this might be more appropriate for? Because there's a terrific network of people who do paper reviews, and they almost always will be like, oh, well, have you thought about this other thing? So if that is not part of the feedback you receive, it's always worth asking.
Sandy, final words of encouragement?
Just absolutely submit and ask questions. I mean, if you sit at home, I will tell you that, a couple of my best friends, I did have to pressure them into submitting. And once they did, they were super successful. Carrie Roberts from Black Hills Information Security, I had to twist her arm to submit into B-Sides Boise. And then she went on and she went to 4 or 5 different other conferences where she loves speaking at conferences now. So I think the first one's the hard one.
And the cool thing is people in the audience will teach you things about your topic that you didn't even know, so you get to learn things too.
And don't ever think of it as that terrible speech or English class that you had to take sometime, because you're talking about stuff that you know. And I go back to the bar napkin thing. You can sit and talk about this in such an informal setting, and I think that's what a lot of what we all have are really just informal settings. There's just more people in the audience is all.
All right. Well, we hope that this panel was very helpful to all of our watchers and listeners. And this will be posted on the IS Unlocked website so that everybody can view it in the future if they want to learn more about how to submit a paper for a conference. And thank you to all of our lovely panelists. Keep their conferences in mind if you live anywhere near them. We kind of have a good array of people across the US. So somebody from almost every time zone. And that's our entire event for tonight. Thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.